Thank you so much. Great to be here early in the morning. There's a requisite coffee joke to be made because it's early in the morning, but I don't drink coffee. And when I tell people that, they look at me like I told them I don't breathe air. It's actually kind of surprising. But thank you guys for being here today, for traveling distances to come here. I want to start it. And before I get deep into this, I want to ask, for those of you here, and I'm going to think of groups broadly, IT, comms, and HR. For those of you in HR and comms, raise your hand if you think you have a pretty good relationship with your IT counterparts. As a former IT person, that's encouraging for me to see that. And for any IT people in the room, how would you describe your partnership with HR and comms? Is it great? If it is, raise your hand. And I I can agree with those as well. So, and then a challenge, a question for everybody. What do you feel, and do you have a lot of struggles and challenges around kind of meaningfully and consistently reaching and engaging your employees? Do you have challenges around that, or does everyone here have kind of employee engagement sorted out? And if so, I'll come talk to you after the fact. So thank you guys for that. It's kind of what I expected. And I intentionally gave my talk today with kind of a provocative title at an intranet conference, but titling it, It's All Comms, because I wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront here. And when we talk about intranet, there's a lot of baggage in that term. We've all worked at companies with ones that you cringed every time you had to go to. You didn't want to tell people to go to it. Rarely have intranets inspired the kind of delight that we see from the people in the slide here. But I wanted to start let's define what an intranet is. And at its basic level, it's a destination where people find information and they hopefully do something with it. Sometimes it's just a bunch of links. Sometimes it's dashboards, and it's all kind of everything in between there. But I wanted to kind of set the table and set kind of the stakes for this. And I wanted to highlight the idea that an intranet is a destination. Everyone always says, hey, go to the intranet to find this. The link is there on the intranet. That form is on the intranet. And when we talk about something as a destination, we all came here today, planes, trains, or automobiles. We came here. It was a destination for us. They have destination weddings. There's one, I don't know if you guys saw in the lobby, there's a bunch of gift boxes for wedding there. But when we have destinations, and particularly when we think of an intranet, how do we get people? How do we arrive at that destination? And a lot of us force it. So we set people's web browser, so the homepage is the intranet, and then we're really, really excited because we have 99% of the employees visiting it every day, but we forced it. We don't give them that choice, and I think people then start to resent it, and they don't want to go there as much because they're being driven to that and sent there that all the time. But there's another way to get people to that destination, and that's to make it compelling. We see the commercials on TV for Disney World, and they make Disney World look amazing, and people want to go there as their destination. Sports teams show what a live game experience looks like. It makes it compelling. Nike wants to sell me more sneakers. I have too many as it is. They show me an ad that's compelling, and that's how you get people to the destination. You make it compelling. And that's the way kind of humans are wired to be attracted to something, is we make it compelling. And the way that we see that then is kind of the natural way to compel people to do something is through communication. It's advertising. It's me telling my kids to clean their rooms and take out the trash and stuff like that. I'm communicating to them. They're not always excited for that communication, but it's the way I'm trying to compel them, which is that communication. So if we think of an intranet, we want to get people to that destination. I want to compel them to do it, and so we communicate to get them to there. And that's why I wanted to make today kind of that it's all about comms, that it's all about communication, how we as people communicate. And so when we talk about the idea, communications is human. Parents, the first thing they're excited about when their kids, the first word. Teenagers, 10-year-olds. I have 4 kids, 3 teenagers and a 10-year-old. 10-year-old, well, she's 12, actually 12. Talking nonstop. I know, she just had a birthday, and so it's throwing me off. talking all the time, babies talk a little bit, and the older teenagers get, they then kind of revert back and they're talking just a little bit as well. But everyone has that need to communicate. It's kind of written in our DNA as humans that we want to communicate, we want to talk, we have kind of experiences that we want to share with other people. And so it's important when we communicate to recognize kind of the humanity of that. Part of communication is having something to say. If you don't have something to say, there's no reason for communication, there's nothing that you're going to want to say, there's, I hate to kind of get onto levels of kind of an output, but there is something that when we are communicating, there is a focus. And communication, we're communicating to someone else. If a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? Similarly, if I'm in the forest and I'm yelling at the trees, is it really communication? It's not. We need to communicate to someone else. There's an audience for our communication. And the last part of communications is we're communicating with the goal of understanding and action. When I tell my kids to clean their room, it's not just for me to hear them, it's actually for them to take the action for them to clean their room. Nike giving me an ad for a new pair of Dunks, it's not just to show me the shoes, it's to get me to buy those shoes. The Disney advertisement is getting me to want to travel to Disney World. And so communications, everyone having something to say to someone else with the goal of understanding and action. And so then I want to we understand that from a human level in our personal interactions. When we get into the business world, into the corporate world, it's really, really easy to forget that. And we start to forget about the humanity of our communications, the connectedness of that. And if we look at the groups, HR, comms, and IT, each of them have communication needs, and they think of it through their lens. So I'm HR. Classic example of HR communications is open enrollment. That's somewhat uniquely American phenomenon where we have to enroll for benefits every year, and it's always top of mind for HR groups. They want to make sure that people know what the deadline is, and there's lots of emails and notes about that deadline because we don't want to miss it. Employee recognition is also a particular focus of HR's communications, helping people to be alerted to the greatness of their peers, especially their peers that they may not regularly interact with. From a communications team and a comms team, they're responsible for telling everybody everything. All the time, in every way, and with 100% accuracy. And if that's your full-time job as communicators, that's a great, great, big challenge. But they also want to know people's sentiment around that. What do they feel about the announcements? And then to be able to provide that information back to leadership. It's an incredibly big challenge. And then IT, change management, that kind of classy example of IT needing to communicate things to other people. Both your computer's getting replaced next week, or there's a new finance system, or hey, by the way, we're going to patch your computer next week. And what IT doesn't want, and what always happens is people postpone it, and then it restarts in the middle of their important meeting. And we don't want that either. So now I have three groups right here, each with their own communication needs. And historically, what's happened is they've all kind of gone about it their own ways. HR places that emphasis on employee recognition, one kind of uniquely HR thing. And because all of these groups are probably the only three groups in your organization that are talking to every single employee, HR is like, we need a recognition program. We have incredibly high turnover in our manufacturing facilities. We want people to be able to have that recognition to keep employees. Comms understands the breadth of their communication needs, and we need a platform that's going to reach everybody, everywhere they are, give us the analytics around that. And IT's like, we want to make sure that people know about this platform, and they know about it in real time, and they're getting the updates around that. So we have a recognition platform, we purchased a comms platform, and maybe a change management or digital adoption platform. And now we have three solutions. So we have different systems, all with the same goal, and no alignment. And the reason we have that lack of alignment is actually around some kind of organizational structure things. If we think of HR, I'll start with comms and IT. My background's in IT leadership, but prior to that, I worked in the communications group for a school district and then spent about 10 years in digital marketing agencies and saw kind of that intersection firsthand. When we think of comms and IT in a typical organization, they have almost no overlap. They rarely interacting apart from someone submitting a service desk ticket. But there's not large-scale projects that are including both of them. And so they haven't built that kind of cultural capital because they so rarely interact. We look at HR and IT, and there's a similar story, but that's because most HR groups have an HRIS function within them. They have a group specifically responsible for managing that primary system of HR employee data, so they can self-serve with a lot of their problems, a lot of their needs. And again, their interaction with IT is primarily around support tickets. So now I've got groups serving the same kind of every employee audience, but there's a real kind of organizational disconnect there and a kind of a dysfunction, and those chasms really lead to organizational inefficiency. So we then start to look at kind of their all needs, their same needs for each member of that organization. How can then the right intranet meaningfully impact each of those groups? So going back here to my kind of initial thesis statement, everyone has something to say to someone else with the goal of understanding and action. So we think about everyone and the kind of foundationally for everyone to communicate. That looks like the right intranet that's easy to use. It's familiar, it's welcoming, it's understandable. It's as easily usable by a staff member on a production floor as is for desk-based engineer. I spent 4 years owning digital workplace for a large manufacturing company, 10,000 kind of employees on the front line manufacturing equipment, and getting to train them and see firsthand the challenges they had around them and knowing the particular needs they had around hearing communication, but also being able to send it. So if we think of kind of groups of HR, comms, and IT, the right intranet gives an HR generalist the really easy capability of having those updates about open enrollment. Makes it really easy for the comms team to get information out and to empower people to communicate to the groups they are most particularly associated with, plant managers up to senior leadership. And from an IT perspective, this is something like empowering the staff who are resolving an issue to actually post updates. We've all been in that scenario where there's a network outage or some kind of computer problem, and IT is sending an update to comms, maybe another person comms, and by the time the information comes out about it, it's not really clear what the problem is. Empowering the people who are working and resolving the problem to actually update about that. Secondly, everyone having something to say. This is the idea that we need rich content capabilities, that the right intranet has rich content in there, and recognition that people respond differently to information presented in different ways. This may be images, it may be videos, emojis and GIFs. Like, the power of emojis and GIFs in communicating messages is actually rather surprising, and you choose the wrong one and it's definitely gonna work against your what you're trying to say. But the ability to have a variety of ways to communicate information. So again, referring back to kind of our 3 groups of HR, comms, and IT. For HR, it's the ability to have kind of structured answers and structured information. Going back to that open enrollment example, everyone has the same questions. So moderated Q&A capabilities, so that HR can answer the questions before they're asked in a way that makes sense to people. For your communications group, these are like live stream capabilities, where everyone from your senior leaders to plant managers others can have ad hoc ways of rich visual, connecting them to senior leaders for celebration in ways that words just don't suffice. And then for IT, there was an example in the fireside chat earlier about kind of compliance and those kind of things, and reminders for people of when they need to meet their requirements as part of their job. Making these kind of capabilities available for IT, for cybersecurity and other programs where they have the kind of provenance of who's seen it and what they've done with it. As we talk about then everyone having something to say to someone else, this gets into the idea of we want to have targeted audiences. We want to have, slides are not advancing, so I will just talk through it. We want to be able to identify our audiences and make sure that they are seeing the right information. And these are audiences that we're not having to spend time manually creating these lists. We're sending information to people because we know who they are based on the information about them, we know where they work and those kind of things. But we kind of then expect communicators, when they're sending that information out, that they're still having to manually build those lists together. Or we have someone that's their job. With the right intranet, these audiences are automatically generated based on the information, the HR data that we know about the people, that they're updated in real time, we can have the confidence that the right people are seeing this information. So from an HR perspective, we have a holiday calendar, and HR can target the US holidays to the US staff and the Canadian holidays, the folks in Canada, and then I, as a US employee, don't see Boxing Day and wonder why I don't have it off, because it sounds like a great holiday. I don't know if we go to a boxing match or what we do, or we all buy boxers, dogs, but we want to give them that targeting. From a comms perspective, this means freeing them from the tyranny of building another list of data that's exported from Workday that they have to refine to remove the email addresses and stuff like that. And then from IT, this frees them from the burden of building the applications that get the data out of the HR system. Previous role, we had a staff person, about half of his job was solely focused on a data kind of export utility, taking information from SAP to get the right people information to get to our communication staff. We want to free them from that as well. Targeted audiences that are always kept up to date. We have confidence they have the right people and they're always updated with that information. Everyone with something to say to someone else with the ultimate goal of understanding and action. This is really the key. This is what makes an intranet what we expect it to be. This is what makes any effort what we expect it to be. We want people to do something with it. We want their life to be made easier. We want our lives to be made easier as a result. So we think of what this looks like, workflows and analytics for those same groups. We want our HR group to be empowered with things like workflow automation and journeys for things like the onboarding process. Every single customer I talk to, there's challenges around onboarding and how we make that consistent and repeatable and get it out of the kind of the manual and mundane so that when employees join our company, it's the best experience they've ever had in joining a company. So how do we pre-board them well? How do we help them to request a machine and understand our corporate values? How can managers then walk them through that journey as well, understanding that they're not having to reinvent the wheel every time? It also means, how do we do employee surveys really well, longitudinal employee surveys really, really well, so that we can see from last year to this year, where were our pockets of excellence at our corporation, where are the areas that we really need to improve, and how can we equip managers to lead their people well in those areas. The right intranet has those capabilities at the fingertips of managers and leaders. From a comms perspective, we want them to be able to plan their communication activities and refine them over time. The best analytics are worthless if they don't actually help you make decisions that you can then analyze after the fact. So we want to give communicators that ability so that when they have the intranet, they have that solution, their effectiveness of it grows over time, and they're not having to kind of, in some sense, restart every time. And this one, as a former IT person, I was IT leader for 10 years in higher ed and then manufacturing and a fintech. Change management is always top of mind for IT because there's always some new transformation coming. New finance system, computer getting resolved, rolling out AI. IT really, really is concerned about change management because they've seen it go poorly so many times. And most IT staff assume it's always got to be really bad. They assume you can't reach the people and they won't pay attention even if you do. The right intranet empowers IT to truly do change management well because they can target communications to those specific audiences with the information they need. It's actionable and it appears to them and it's available to them in their flow of work. It's not another email that they're getting. It's actionable insight inside of their intranet. And then they have the analytics. So particularly for IT staff, we can help them to understand how they can refine over time what messaging helps and makes sense for them. So we have communication, everyone with something to say to someone else with the goal of understanding and action, and the right intranet helps to make all that available. And so I want to close and leave you all with three takeaways. First one, I want you to recognize the commonalities. IT, comms, and HR serve every employee at their company, and they have many of the same needs. When you recognize that, it opens your eyes to the challenges that your peers and those other groups have, but also the ways that you can be partners in that. Number two, bridge cultural gaps. Take the initiative to build bridges across your organizational cultures. So if you're in comms, build those bridges with IT. If you're in IT, build those bridges with comms. Same thing of the HR perspective. It can be easy to think that our responsibilities and our obligations and our opportunities and our role are very specific to us. You'll be surprised at how many of your peers are experiencing the same things. And so your ability and willingness to bridge those gaps will not only enrich you personally, but will make a meaningful difference in your organization. And then finally, let's dump the intranet baggage. Intranet is a really loaded term with a lot of baggage. No one's excited when they hear the word intranet. But when you have the right solution, it flips it into an engine of understanding and action. It's people-centered, we have a goal of communication, and the end result of understanding and action. And that's why it's all comms. Should I ask for questions? Do you want to come up? Do you have questions for me? Any questions? We have a mic here if you have questions. No question too small. One's had to train someone on how to use a mouse, so there's absolutely no question that's too small.
Coming to the mic, please. Thank you.
Can you keep talking? There we go. I was curious about takeaway number 2 there about bridging cultural gaps. I read that and I think regular meeting check-ins or whatever, but are there more innovative ways of bridging a gap there?
I think a lot of it is being aware. It's, I'll say from a communications perspective, I'll come from the comms lens first. So I'm probably going to hear someone, either IT is going to come to me and say, we need your help with something, or they're going to hear about a big IT initiative. Kind of proactively reaching out to them, say, hey, how can I help you guys be really effective with your change management around that? I think similarly on the IT, let's say we'll come at that one from an IT lens, it's as they may be receiving communications, or they may see their staff and how their staff are kind of receiving communications about that, they may have ideas of either new technologies that may enable some of that stuff, or they may be able to provide things like access to analytics or things like that that the comms groups may not to help provide that. Particularly, I know if you're a big SharePoint organization, SharePoint makes analytics really, really difficult and that stuff. So that's an area where IT can potentially step in if they're actually able to get all the data out of the system that they want to have, which oftentimes still is really hard to do. So I think it's kind of being aware of the pain that they may be dealing with or their initiatives. But I think also it's sometimes just like letting them know how much you appreciate them. Like we think of like employee recognition. I started at Workvivo last June, and like the first time kind of I was recognized in our instance of it, like it's hard to express how meaningful it is for your employees to recognize you. So even encouraging those groups to kind of as visibly as they can recognize each other, I think it helps to break down those walls and helps, it sets a real solid foundation for future collaboration. Yeah. Any other questions?
All right. Please join me in thanking Chris for his time today. Really appreciate that.